The model of meaning. How human systems interpret reality. Most people assume that meaning is something private, a feeling, a belief, a personal interpretation, something that belongs inside the mind. But the philosophical intelligence institute begins from a different premise. Meaning is not merely private. Meaning is structural. It is one of the hidden architectures through which human beings, organizations, cultures, and institutions interpret reality. A policy does not simply mean what the document says. A symbol does not simply mean what its designer intended. A reform does not simply mean efficiency. A crisis does not simply mean danger. Every event enters a field of interpretation, and inside that field, people ask deeper questions, often without saying them aloud. What does this mean for us? What does this say about who we are? Is this fair? Can this authority be trusted? Does this fit our story? Does this threaten our dignity? Does this preserve or break the world we thought we were living in? This is why I developed the model of meaning, or MoMean. MoMean is a framework for understanding how meaning is formed, stabilized, disrupted, and repaired. It is designed for a world in which data alone no longer explains behavior, because people do not live inside data, they live inside meaning. The first principle of MoMean is simple. Meaning is the architecture of significance. Meaning determines what something counts as. The same event can be interpreted as progress, betrayal, reform, loss, liberation, humiliation, threat, or renewal. A government announcement can be seen as responsible management by one group and as institutional abandonment by another. A technological system can be seen as innovation by designers, but surveillance by citizens. A workplace restructure can be seen as efficiency by executives, but identity loss by staff. The event is the same. The meaning is different, and because the meaning is different, the behavior is different. This is why human systems cannot be understood at the surface level. MoMean asks us to look beneath the event. Not only what happened, but what did it signify? To whom? Within which story? Against which identity? Under which fairness expectation? With what emotional tone? And under what legitimacy conditions? The second principle of MoMean is that meaning is never isolated. Meaning is produced through a system of related layers. At the center of MoMean are several key dimensions. Identity, who we understand ourselves to be. Narrative, the story that explains what is happening. Symbolism, the images, words, rituals, and signals that carry significance. Fairness, whether the situation feels morally balanced. Legitimacy, whether authority feels justified. Emotional tone, what the situation feels like from the inside. Phenomenology, the lived experience of the people inside the system. These dimensions interact. Identity shapes narrative. Narrative shapes meaning. Meaning reinforces identity. This is the deep interpretive loop. When the loop is coherent, people can understand their world. When it is broken, meaning begins to collapse. Consider a public institution introducing a major reform. Technically, the reform may be well designed. The data may be accurate. The model may be efficient.
The implementation plan may be logical, but if the reform tells people implicitly that their past work had no value, then the meaning changes. It no longer means improvement. It means disrespect. If the reform imposes new burdens on one group while protecting another, it no longer means modernization. It means unfairness. If the institution cannot explain why the reform is necessary, it no longer means leadership. It means opacity. If people feel that the reform violates the story of who they are, it no longer means change. It means identity threat. This is the central insight of MoMean. Systems fail when the technical meaning and the human meaning diverge. The third principle of MoMean is the distinction between meaning resonance and meaning dissonance. Meaning resonates when a message, policy, reform, or action fits the deeper interpretive structure of the people receiving it. It resonates when it aligns with identity, when it fits the existing narrative, when it satisfies fairness expectations, when it feels emotionally coherent, when it is symbolically appropriate, when it carries legitimacy. Meaning resonance is not manipulation. It is not public relations. It is not persuasion. It is alignment with the deeper structure of a human world. Meaning dissonance occurs when one or more of these layers is misaligned. People may not immediately explain why they reject something. They may say, "This feels wrong. They don't understand us. This is not fair. This is not who we are. This doesn't make sense. We don't trust them."
These are not irrational reactions. They are meaning signals. They indicate that the system has encountered dissonance at a deeper layer. This is where MoMean becomes practically useful. It helps us diagnose why a system is resisting, fragmenting, polarizing, or losing trust. MoMean asks, is this a problem of information? Or is it a problem of meaning? Is this a communication failure or a legitimacy failure? Is this resistance to change or identity threat? Is this confusion or narrative collapse? Is this emotional reaction or symbolic injury? Without MoMean, institutions often misread meaning problems as technical problems. They respond with more data, more messaging, more procedure, more enforcement, more efficiency. But if the underlying problem is meaning dissonance, these responses may make the situation worse, because they intensify action without repairing interpretation. The fourth principle of MoMean is that meaning can collapse. Meaning collapse occurs when people can no longer explain what is happening in a coherent way. The story breaks. The authority loses legitimacy. The symbols no longer stabilize trust. Fairness expectations are violated. Identity becomes threatened. Emotional tone darkens. People no longer know where they stand. In organizations, meaning collapse appears as cynicism, disengagement, quiet resistance, symbolic withdrawal, and loss of trust. In societies, it appears as polarization, conspiracy thinking, institutional suspicion, cultural fragmentation, and narrative conflict. In governance, it appears when official explanations no longer match lived experience. This is why meaning collapse is dangerous. It does not only produce misunderstanding, it produces instability. When meaning collapses, people search for replacement stories. Some of those stories may be constructive. Others may be extreme, resentful, or destructive. MoMean therefore treats meaning as a stabilizing infrastructure. If meaning fails, systems become vulnerable to escalation. The fifth principle of MoMean is that meaning is also repairable. Meaning repair does not mean inventing a comforting story. It means restoring coherence between reality, identity, narrative, fairness, legitimacy, and lived experience. A system begins to repair meaning when it can say, here is what happened. Here is why it matters. Here is who was affected. Here is what was unfair. Here is what authority accepts responsibility for. Here is what must change. Here is how the future can become intelligible again. Meaning repair requires more than messaging. It requires interpretive integrity. The explanation must match the lived reality. The narrative must be truthful enough to hold. The fairness burden must be acknowledged. The symbolic injury must be understood. The legitimacy gap must be addressed. The identity threat must be reduced. This is why MoMean connects directly to governance, consulting, leadership, crisis response, and social interpretation. A leader who cannot manage meaning cannot sustain trust. A government that cannot interpret meaning cannot maintain legitimacy. A consultant who cannot diagnose meaning may solve the wrong problem. An AI system who cannot diagnose meaning may solve the wrong problem. An AI system that cannot understand meaning may optimize outputs while damaging the human world it enters.
For the Philosophical Intelligence Institute, the model of meaning is not an isolated model. It is part of a wider interpretive architecture. PII does not treat meaning as decoration. Meaning is not something added after policy has been designed, after strategy has been written, after governance has acted, or after technology has already entered the world. Meaning comes before acceptance. Meaning comes before trust. Meaning comes before cooperation. Meaning comes before legitimacy. A policy can be technically correct and still fail if people cannot understand what it means. A strategy can be analytically sound and still collapse if it violates the identity of the people expected to carry it. A governance decision can be procedurally lawful and still lose legitimacy if it appears unfair, opaque, humiliating, or disconnected from lived experience. This is why PII treats meaning as a condition of system functionality. Meaning is not public relations. It is not branding. It is not emotional language placed on top of a technical structure. Meaning is one of the conditions that determines whether policy, strategy, governance, and institutional action can function at all. Because human beings do not act only on facts. They act on interpreted facts. A fact becomes actionable only after it has passed through an interpretive field. It is filtered through identity. What does this mean for who we are? It is filtered through narrative.
What story does this place us inside? It is filtered through fairness. Who carries the burden and who receives the benefit? It is filtered through legitimacy. Is the authority behind this action justified? It is filtered through symbolism. What signals, images, words, gestures, or histories does this activate? It is filtered through emotion. Does this feel safe, threatening, dignifying, humiliating, hopeful, or abandoning? And it is filtered through lived experience. What does this feel like from inside the system? Only after passing through these layers does a fact become meaningful enough to guide action. This is why two groups can encounter the same fact and respond in completely different ways. They are not merely disagreeing about information, they are interpreting the information from different meaning positions. One group may see reform, another sees loss. One group may see efficiency, another sees abandonment. One group may see neutrality, another sees symbolic injury. One group may see innovation, another sees domination. MoMean is designed to interpret this process. It helps us see that governance does not operate on raw reality. Governance operates on interpreted reality. Strategy does not operate inside a neutral field. It operates inside a field of identity, narrative, expectation, fear, memory, value, and trust. Technology does not enter an empty world. It enters a world already structured by human meaning. This is why PII places the model of meaning within a broader architecture of philosophical intelligence. MoMean connects to ontology because we must first understand what kind of thing we are dealing with. It connects to identity because meaning is always interpreted by someone from somewhere. It connects to narrative because people need a story that makes events intelligible. It connects to fairness because meaning collapses when burdens feel unjust. It connects to legitimacy because action requires more than power, it requires justified authority. It connects to phenomenology because systems are not only designed from the outside, they are lived from the inside. And it connects to governance because every serious act of governance must eventually answer the question, what does this mean to the people who must live under it? This is the world MoMean is designed to interpret. A world where facts matter, but facts alone are not enough. A world where data must become intelligible. A world where institutions must understand not only what they are doing, but what their actions signify. A world where the failure to interpret meaning becomes a failure of leadership, governance, and trust. For PII, meaning is not the soft layer after reality. Meaning is one of the structures through which reality becomes humanly actionable. MoMean also helps us understand culture and civilization. Different cultures do not merely hold different opinions. They organize meaning differently. They may differ in their view of authority, personhood, duty, freedom, harmony, history, dignity, sacredness, fairness, and legitimacy. This is why global conflict is often more than a clash of interests. It is a clash of meaning systems.
One civilization may interpret an action as lawful procedure. Another may interpret it as humiliation. One institution may interpret a policy as neutral. Another community may experience it as symbolic erasure. One actor may speak the language of efficiency. Another hears the language of abandonment. MoMean gives PII a way to map these deeper structures. It asks not only what actors want, it asks what their world means to them. The model of meaning
can be summarized in one sentence. Meaning is the structured significance through which human systems interpret reality and decide how to respond. Where meaning is coherent, systems can stabilize. Where meaning is dissonant, systems begin to resist. Where meaning collapses, systems fragment. Where meaning is repaired, trust can return. This is why meaning is not a soft issue. Meaning is infrastructure, invisible but decisive. And in a world of accelerating technology, institutional mistrust, cultural conflict, and narrative overload, meaning may be one of the most important forms of intelligence we have. The Philosophical Intelligence Institute develops frameworks for understanding meaning, governance, identity, legitimacy, and system transformation. Because we do not simply look at the world, we interpret it. And the quality of our interpretation shapes the future we are able to build. PII. Frameworks turn complexity into admissible decisions.